Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. You are watching The Winning Ticket 21 live at DraftKings at Casino Queen. We got a lot of action to cover today, guys. College football playoff, coming to an end. Ohio State, and Georgia last week, and Michigan TCU, of course. What a lot of scoring last week, by the way. The Dogs come on top of the Buckeyes on a wild finish about midnight. As the clock struck midnight, the Buckeyes miss a field goal. The Dogs move on, so it'll be the Dogs and the Frogs as TCU upends the favorite Michigan. We liked TCU last week, guys. I said take the 8.5 points with the Frogs, and TCU was one of my favorite picks of the week last week. 8.5 is just too many points for Max Duggan. Max Duggan's done nothing but been in every single game this year. So TCU, who did not enter the season ranked in the top 25, is going to end the season as a national championship game against the Dogs out of Athens, Georgia. So we've got a great matchup Monday night out in SoFi Stadium, out in LA. Now, of course, there's a controversy with LA where they're not allowing tailgating for the national championship game on Monday for some reason, which a lot of college football fans are puzzled by that. Not really sure why, but they said, no tailgating in SoFi Stadium. So that's a California thing, I guess. No tailgating. They did have the governor of Georgia on a few days ago in an interview, and he said that last year when it was at Mercedes Benz in Atlanta, they had tailgating last year, and when it comes back to the state of Georgia, they will have tailgating, for a national championship game. So that's kind of strange, but nevertheless, we got a lot of action to cover today with college basketball. We're getting into the swing of things now with college basketball, where there's going to be 130 plus, 140 plus games on a day. So lots of action with college basketball, guys. That's going to tip off today with Notre Dame, North Carolina, with a 10:30 a.m. Central start. That's a very early start in Chapel Hill. So North Carolina, who entered the season number one in the country somehow, because they got into a run last year with March Madness. They made a run in the tournament. They brought a lot of people back. So they thought that North Carolina would carry that over, but no, that's not happened. North Carolina's out of the top 25, and if you look at this North Carolina team, they have been in kind of a rut lately. So if you go down their schedule, they had 4 losses in a row to Iowa State, Alabama, Indiana, Virginia Tech. That's not a sign of a top 20, top 10, top 15, top 20 team. So they have fallen out of the top 25. They're going to look to get back on track today against the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. But if you look at the ACC standings, there's an interesting game today with Pittsburgh and Clemson, who is going to be playing for the first place in the ACC. Right now, they're all both 4-0 with Pitt and Clemson. Pitt's going to be at home. My Clemson Tigers are going on the road, trying to go 5-0 in the ACC and wrap up a first place standings by themselves. So that's kind of exciting in the ACC. And one thing to look out for is the futures bets, guys, for national championship winner this year. I know that Houston is the team that I was on come October or early November. The Houston Cougars kind of fell into a rut, though. For a couple of weeks, they just weren't scoring. You didn't know if they were going to remain in the top 5, top 10, and be one of those teams you can rely on come March because of their scoring. But they've gotten back on track. The Cougars have, been scoring and been just killing people the last 30 days or so. So they've gotten on track. They're number 2 in the country right now. And interesting thing I noticed, Mattress Mac, who we've all known from the Houston Astros to place those Astros World Series bets, he made a $1.5 million bet on the Houston Cougars to win the national championship. So we'll see how that turns out for old Mattress Mac. But hey, when you're Mattress Mac, $1.5 million, I think the guy can afford it after his World Series win, right? I think he won 60 to 70 million on the Astros with that futures bet from the sports books. So, but yeah, looking at the slate for futures bets, let's talk a little NFL futures. So we've got the Chiefs at the top here, and they're tied with the Bills at 3.75 to 1. So almost 4 to 1, let's say, for the Chiefs and Bills. They're going to be your favorites. The Chiefs are always there, of course. Patrick Mahomes, what they do with that offense, they're always going to be, expected to be in every single game they play. The Chiefs just don't lose by more than 7 to 10 points if they do lose a game, it seems like. Then you got the Niners and the Eagles following them at around 5 to 1. So Niners are just what they are, man. Zone run, zone run, zone run with that offense. And then they've got Christian McCaffrey now in that trade. So, Niners are going to be right up there with that defense as well. So they're 5 to 1 right now for your Super Bowl futures. Eagles are kind of a surprise. Jalen Hurts kind of took this league by storm. Jalen Hurts has really done a good job. He's been hurt the last week or so. He's going to remain hurt for tomorrow as well. But Eagles are 5.5 to 1 now. They're going to be looking to win that division and battling the Cowboys, battling Dallas for that NFC East title. And Bengals are speaking of Dallas, they're 11 to 1. Cowboys are 11 to 1. I know everybody makes fun of the Cowboys and they always choke. They always, find a way to lose. Last year against the 49ers, they lost at home. But, Dallas is sitting at 11 to 1. They last year probably doesn't have anything to do with this year. So they got some nice value at 11 to 1. They're pretty strong defensively, although last couple of weeks they haven't looked good. Micah Parsons, they've got one of the best defenders in the league in Parsons, of course. So they're sitting at 11 to 1. I think there's some value with the boys on the Super Bowl futures there at 11 to 1. Bengals are sitting at 7.5 to 1. So Bengals at 7.5 to 1. A lot of people could argue that the Chiefs gave that game away last year, allowed the Bengals to get to that Super Bowl. I'm going to be in that camp as well. I don't think the better team won that game in the AFC Championship game. I think the Chiefs gave that game away in the second half, of course. Chiefs were the better team. But nevertheless, Bengals got to that Super Bowl, and they are sitting at 7.5 to 1 right now on Super Bowl futures. Now, a lot of you're going to get a big drop off now. We've talked about the Chiefs all the way down to the Cowboys at 11 to 1. Now we're going to get a big drop off here to the Chargers, and it more than doubles the 11 to 1 Cowboys pace. The Chargers are going to be 25 to 1, guys, and they're playing good right now. A lot of times, as the Bengals proved last year, it's not about necessarily how talented you are, how good you've been the whole year. It's what have you done for me lately? How good are you playing now? Chargers are playing pretty good. Mike Williams, they're one of their best receivers, the guy they go to in the red zone, the fade to Mike, throw it up to Mike, he's healthy. That whole offense is pretty much healthy. Chargers are sitting at 25 to 1. So you're getting a big number on the Chargers, 25 to 1 for Super Bowl futures. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers are following the Chargers. So this Buccaneers team has been one of the biggest surprises this year, to say the least. Tom Brady has really got on a team that this is probably his worst team he's been on in a long time, guys. They've just been injured. They don't have much as far as stretching the field. Fournette's been on and off the field. They've got a young running back backing him up. So Buccaneers are sitting at 30 to 1. Baltimore's at 30 to 1. The next team is at 30 to 1 too. Now this is kind of a surprise because nobody's really bought in on this team, but they've done nothing but win. The whole year they've done nothing but win. The next team sitting at 30 to 1 is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. And Vikings, they're a strong team. They've done nothing but win. They're 30 to 1 because not a lot of people believe in them. There's not a lot of action came in on the Vikings Super Bowl futures. So, you've got some value here with the Vikings. 30 to 1. I don't know what kind of number you could look for the Vikings, but 30 to 1 is as good as you can get. Packers are sitting at 35-1. They were forgotten. This Green Bay team was 4-8, guys. 4-8. So they are 35-1 now. They are playing the Detroit Lions today to see who's going to go to the playoffs. So, Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs, Green Bay in the playoffs, 0 degrees, the frozen tundra. And I always talk about the home field advantage with Aaron Rodgers. So they are sitting at 35-1 right now. And one of my favorite teams to follow, of course, with my Clemson Tigers, are following them to the pros. I got Trevor and ETN in Jacksonville. So they are really starting to catch notice with this league, guys. Jacksonville Jaguars are getting back into the league. They are playing Tennessee for the division today. Whoever wins this Tennessee-Jacksonville game, they are going to win this division, guys. So Jacksonville's 6.5 today, 6 to 6.5. I like teasing them personally. I like bringing this line down to a pick 'em. You'll have Jacksonville as a pick 'em and maybe throw something in there. So throw something else in there like the over on the Chiefs game. You can move that down to like 47, 46 points. Take the over on the Chiefs Raiders and the pick 'em at Jacksonville. So you'll have like a 2-team teaser. I think there's a lot of value in that. I don't think there's any way the Jaguars lose this game today. And let's see what the Jaguars Super Bowl futures are. 50-1. Second-year quarterback, 50-1. There was a second-year quarterback last year that did pretty good in Joe Burrow. So Jacksonville sitting at 50-1, guys. ETN has really taken this league by storm the last couple of weeks. He made a run last week. Do we have that clip that we can put up of the Jaguars running back ETN? He made a run last week, guys, that just ran through defenders. Just made me think that this guy's got over 1,000 yards now. ETN's sitting at 1,100 yards right now. This guy is really turning it on. Reminds me of the runs he made at Clemson when they were winning those national championship game against Bama, and that national championship game he played against LSU in 2019. Actually went down for that game. So I was in New Orleans. One of the most expensive games for sure. What's that? You ready? Yeah. So here's that run against Houston last week. He made some runs last week, guys,
after a 2-6 start.
One to the end zone, ran through 2 defenders.
Jaguars running with ETN. Right, and he crosses the 25.
Yeah, if you look
Walker
here,
last at Stanford.
ETN's going to get the ball from Trevor right here, run to the right side.
ETN, head of steam, nice looking run, slips a tackle. ETN into the open field and shoved out of bounds by John.
The next one here.
We get a nice hole on the right side. Chris Manhurst, number 84, the tight end coming down. And then a missed tackle. You miss tackles in the secondary, you're going to give up these long chunk runs.
Take it to 6.
10 for Jacksonville.
I mean, to the left
and
side
ETN
here.
on first down has the crease.
And then
there he goes.
ETN. 20-10.
See you later. Touchdown.
A lot of that stuff.
A 62-yard run.
Jennings, Louisiana native.
Now it's a tiny.
Making some strong moves in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. So Jacksonville's going to be fun to watch. So they're going to win the division. I think they're going to get past Tennessee today. So that's going to be pretty exciting for Jacksonville. Give some excitement to Jacksonville. They've been down for a while ever since they lost that playoff game to New England back about 5 years ago. They gave that game away against New England. That Jaguars defense and Jalen Ramsey had that game won, and they gave that game away against the Patriots about 5 years ago or so. But, they're going to take on Tennessee today. So we're going to have 6.5. Jaguars minus 6.5. Throw that in a teaser. I don't think there's any way the Jags lose this game. I would do it. You could do it the other way with Tennessee plus 13.5. I just think I don't trust Tennessee's offense right now. I trust Jacksonville's offense. The way they've been looking, they scored 30-something. Could have scored 40, but they put the brakes on in the fourth quarter against Houston last week. So, Jacksonville, I don't see any way they lose this game at home. Total sitting at 40. That's about where it should be. 40's about where it should be. Tennessee can't score. Josh Dobbs sitting at a quarterback for Tennessee. He's Josh Dobbs came from University of Tennessee at the Volunteers, so he's going to be starting for the Titans today, getting some of his first NFL action as kind of a career backup since Tannehill went down and Malik Willis didn't really work out. So Jacksonville, I like them today. I like the over in Kansas City, Las Vegas. So the Raiders, that total sitting at 52.5. Tease it down. Take it the 47 to 48 points on a teaser. Take the over on that. And do a little two-team teaser. So that's going to be one of my favorite plays today. I would say I was thinking about taking Chiefs -3 and teasing it down. But the way that Denver looked last week against that Chiefs defense, it's hard for me to trust the Chiefs on a big spread like 9.5 or even 3. Vegas scores 30-something last week against the Niners, and that was a big spread. Vegas covered no problem. They almost won that game against the Niners. That would have been a big shock last week. So Jarrett Stidham, I think he played way better than what he's capable of. You see that a lot in the NFL. So you're going to see these young quarterbacks get their first start. They're going to be hyped up. They're going to play way above their head, way better than they're capable of. Kind of like Mike White did with the Jets. Mike White had that first start with the Jets, lit it on fire, threw a bunch of touchdown passes, a bunch of yards. Jets did very well that first game, and then Mike White slid down the slide after that and really went down. So I think you're going to see that with Jarrett Stidham of the Raiders. Jarrett Stidham's kind of a journeyman quarterback in the NFL, came from Auburn, was never high on him when he was at Auburn. That's why I'm not really high on him. I think he played the game of his life last week against San Francisco. So I think he's going to come back down to earth. We wouldn't be surprised to see Kansas City cover this 9.5, but it's hard for me to trust them after last week, after watching what Denver was able to do against Kansas City's defense. So I'm going to just say tease the over here. Tease the Kansas City, Las Vegas over, and throw the Jacksonville Jaguars in it then as well. So, we're looking good there. So that's two of my favorite plays today, guys. But, we're going to take a short break here. Micah Mills is going to be joining us. We're going to talk a little bit of UFC and talk about the Dogs and the Frogs on Monday night. So we're going to have a good national championship game, I think. TCU, that line opened at 13.5, and it's coming down because of that TCU money coming in. But we're going to take a quick 2 to 3 minute break. We'll be back after this.
Domination. I've got a golden ticket.
That's a winner!
Welcome back, guys. Thanks for joining us again. We're live here from DraftKings at Casino Queen. Micah Mills joining us. How are you doing this morning, Micah?
Every day is a holiday, Big John, and every meal's a feast if you know the right people.
Oh, yeah, that's the truth. Speak of meals, I gotta get back on track with my meals. I went from before Thanksgiving. I went from about 260 to 235.
Doing what?
Just being intentional to answer your question.
Okay.
You know, it's all about being intentional, guys. If we want to do something, we'll do it, right?
Well, first thing I said to you is that you look like you lost weight. And
a little bit.
You've been in the sauna. You've been cutting weight, getting down to your fighting weight.
My fighting weight. He's gonna. This guy knows a little about fighting weight, guys. But I don't. I need to cut the weight. But I went from 260 to 235, and
that's significant. I mean,
it is. All I did was stop the sugar.
Okay.
Sugar's so we stopped that stuff and we just drop what the sugar adds on.
Yeah.
So bread, sodas, sweet tea. Being from South Carolina, guys, that's the state drink is sweet tea.
As someone who went to school in Alabama, and when I was a pledge in my fraternity, we would make the sweet tea for the entire house.
Okay.
And the amount of sugar that went into the sweet tea, we're talking bags of sugar on a daily basis, and we would drink that stuff like it was water.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember coming out of college, 15 pounds overweight, and wondering why. I cut out sweet tea, and it was like the pounds just fell off. But at the same time, it's such a hard thing to cut because it is the nectar of the gods. I mean, sweet tea, it's like, there's certain things that you're put on this earth to do.
Yeah.
One of them is to drink sweet tea.
Yeah, it's hard to give that up. But so sugar is usually 2 cups of sugar to a gallon. I had cut it back getting up here. The wifey's like, just do 1 cup. So I did the 1 cup. And then she's got it changing it to the alternative sugar, the stevia. So the stevia sugar. She changed it one time. I didn't know the difference. So
that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah. So I've cut that back and just cut the sugar and the bread out, dropped to 235. But then what happened to us? Thanksgiving.
It'll do it.
What my favorite holiday is.
It'll do it. Yeah.
So I went all out. I went all in for Thanksgiving. I was all in. And I've been all in ever since, unfortunately. So, after Thanksgiving, we gotta, get the sugar and bread cut back, get back to 235. I'm back up to 250 now, so I'm down 10 pounds. But
you look good. You look good. You look lean and mean. I mean, we're just about
lean,
ready
mean,
for
betting
you.
Machine.
That's right. So, an interesting story or an anecdote about Thanksgiving specifically. That is the worst holiday for wrestlers across the country.
Oh, really?
Because if you think about it, that's kind of like right at the beginning of the season. Everybody's trying to kind of get to that weight where you need to be. So Thanksgiving for me when I was in high school was an absolute misery the entire time because all you're doing is thinking about the food that you cannot eat. You're sitting there at the table, you got your rice cakes, and everybody else got the big spread out, and your mouth is watering watching your friends and family eat as you're sitting there thinking about, I got to make 125 tomorrow or the next day. And I have a better appreciation though for Thanksgiving now that I'm able, but for the Evan Elders of the world, shout out Evan, he's sitting there at Thanksgiving thinking what I would do for just a little bit of this stuffing, just a little bit, which another question, what is your favorite Thanksgiving meal? Like what's your, if you were to narrow it down?
You spending your time in Alabama, you were in the Southeast a little. Thanksgiving and get-togethers is all about casseroles.
All right. Good answer.
So whatever, and they make everything a casserole in the South. Throw some meat, some cheese, and some rice and bake it. Whatever, they do vegetable, squash casserole. Just all kind of different casseroles and stuff.
Was there anything that your family made growing up that was like
banana pudding? We always love banana pudding, pecan pie.
It's a classic.
Pecan pie and banana pudding. Yeah, I did bring some St. Louis flavor down to South Carolina for this Thanksgiving, though. I brought a strawberry, a brownie, and a regular ooey gooey butter cake.
All right.
Yeah, so
Good
we had
deal.
a gooey butter cakes. We brought them down to
What'd they
South
think?
Carolina. They didn't
Good
know
reviews?
what they were. Loved them.
Good
though.
reviews.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if you don't like gooey butter cake, there's something wrong
There
with
is
you.
something wrong with you. That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
So, yeah, but they loved them. So we had a time. We had a good time. Had some football that weekend, of course, rivalry weekend.
And what were your thoughts on rivalry weekend? I know it's been a minute since we've caught up, so I apologize for the questions, but I want to catch up with you.
Well,
what are your thoughts kind of on
that was an awful rivalry weekend for us, of course.
Yes.
Losing to the Cox. They're and that unfortunate mascot they have.
May I ask you, what's going on at Clemson? What's going on?
We'd have been right there with the Dogs and the Frogs if he'd have played Cade Klubnik the whole year. But, Dabo gets a flyer. He gets a get out of jail free card.
Yep.
He gets I'm human and I made a mistake. He gets many of those cards because he's put Clemson to where they are today. So he gave me and all the Clemson family, one of the greatest memories that we've ever had in this whole run Clemson's been on. I mean, there's so much stuff, not just national championships, but of course the natties and the big bowl wins, the winning streak against South Carolina we've had, and everything. So Dabo gets a pass, but he should have played the kid.
Yeah.
If Dabo can go back to Labor Day weekend, I'm sure he would do the same thing he did with Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant when he played both of them to start that year. But he fell in love with DJ. DJ lost 30 to 40 pounds in the offseason. He got his knee healthy. He took this season a lot serious than he took the 2021 offseason. So DJ came in and was as good as he could be. But the problem is Klubnik was just a lot better than DJ ever can be. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. But Dabo's a loyal guy. Mm-hmm. And that speaks to how he recruits. And that speaks to how he uses the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. He doesn't use the transfer portal that much. He's taken one transfer that comes to mind, Hunter Johnson, a backup quarterback. So, and the one transfer he took was he recruited Hunter Johnson as a freshman. He signed on at Clemson, transferred to Northwestern, and started at Northwestern for a year and came back to Clemson. Mm-hmm. So he took a former Clemson player as a transfer, as a backup quarterback. But he just doesn't like the transfer portal that much. He's on record of saying, the transfer portal is in my locker room. That's my transfer portal. So if you think about it, I understand what he's saying, and I understand why people are saying he should use the portal. But what he's saying to recruits is, when he sits down with a 17-year-old in their house, and he says, you're going to get every opportunity to play here. Mm-hmm. They believe that. Mm-hmm. Versus, I'm going to replace you with a 23-year-old fifth-year or sixth-year senior. Because that's what's happening in college football now. These freshmen and sophomores are getting replaced with juniors and seniors and fifth-year seniors which is a really interesting in the transfer portal.
It's something that not a lot of people are talking about, I don't think. Mm-hmm. But I think the transfer portal it's created this world of competition that was not there years back, just because it used to be that a Dabo could go to a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid's home and say, you're going to play. But now we're talking about really grown men that are, 23, 24, that have been around forever. They've played in multiple systems. And frankly, I do think there's a difference between just your body development in that time period between the ages of 18 and 23 that is significant. And so how do you, as an 18-year-old, compete now? And I know some of these kids are absolute monsters, but I'm just curious to kind of hear your thoughts on the transfer portal and how that's impacted.
Yeah, Dabo's going to have to use the portal a little bit more than he is now, because the problem we're running into is we're losing guys that aren't playing. Mm-hmm. We're losing backup defensive linemen, backup linebackers. You have to have depth.
Yep.
You've got to be able to replace these guys and have depth. I mean, that's no questions about it. You have to. So when you lose a guy, you've got to go out and get depth and replace them.
Can I ask you another question about my favorite current NFL player?
Yeah.
Hunter Renfrow.
Hunter Renfrow, big game Hunter.
My boy.
Why is he your favorite of all?
Because I feel like I could do what he does. And that's totally false. Of course I could not. Yeah. But you look at him in the mirror and you look at me in the mirror and our stats aren't that different as opposed to a DK Metcalf where I could spend all the time in the world in the gym, but I'll never look or be that genetic freak that DK Metcalf is. You have a Hunter Renfrow. What separates a guy like that?
Hunter Renfrow is an interesting story. Just real quickly, I'll tell you Hunter's story.
Love him.
He's a local kid from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He turned down a full ride to Appalachian State, I believe, and maybe a few other smaller offers to walk on at Clemson. Myrtle Beach is about 4 hours away from Clemson, guys. So he came from the coast to the upstate of South Carolina and walked on at Clemson. His freshman year, Dabo was doing interviews in the beginning of August, talking about camp, talking about how the team's looking this year. And they were talking about red shirts. We're going to red shirt these freshmen. They're not going to play. You red shirt them so you get that extra year, which you don't see as much anymore. But you red shirt them. So everybody thinks Hunter Renfrow is going to get a red shirt. He's a walk-on wide receiver. We're stacked at wide receiver pretty much. You got this little guy that's, 6 foot if he's got, heels on. If he's got high heels, he might be 6 foot.
6 foot, but 180.
Yeah, 6 foot 180.
Best case.
Best case for Hunter Renfrow.
Listed at, I'm listed at 5'11". I'm 5'8",
Yeah. So he's a little man that makes some amazing plays. But, Dabo's like, no, we're not going to redshirt Renfrow. He's actually going to play this year, and he's going to help us win games this year. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, whatever, Dabo. That's just, speaking up on your guys, doing coach speak, trying to make them look good. So we didn't think anything of it. And the first game of the year, he made a catch against Auburn in the corner of the end zone. That was an incredible play. Deshaun Watson put it in the corner of the end zone, back pylon, and Hunter Renfrow leaps, grabs it, and catches it. I mean, just an incredible catch. That took notice.
That's what Hunter put him on my radar.
He just catches everything.
Auburn. Yeah.
We used to have a saying at Clemson called third down and Renfrow because you knew it was going to him. Third down and Renfrow. Yep. You knew it was going to him, and you couldn't stop it.
But it's wild to me. It's like, what about him? Because he looks so normal.
Yeah, he is. Looks normal. I mean, you couldn't.
If he was
walking
down,
you couldn't notice him. If you walked by, you doesn't look like an athlete.
No.
But the guy catches everything, the way he runs routes,
he gets open.
The way he runs routes,
finds space.
He finds space, gets open. A very hard receiver to guard. If you ask defensive backs, safeties, linebackers in the NFL, one of their hardest guys to guard and contain, they've said Hunter Renfrow before.
Yep.
So,
which is astounding to go from walk-on to I do remember listening to an interview after Clemson had beat Bama in the national championship, and it was like I think a Barstool interview, but with Renfrow, and he was just like, I was just excited to get a jersey. Like initially when he started out, I was excited to play. I was excited to be on the team. They gave me a helmet, That was like my dream growing up, and so it was interesting to hear kind of his background, and then going from walk-on to now a perennial NFL problem on the offensive line, on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
And it's just, I love him because he's just a little dude out there hustling, and he's got it between the ears, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, the route running, the preparation, the way he just catches everything. You don't see him drop much. He made a play last year on a fake punt. The Chargers were running a fake punt. Let's see if we can pull that up for everybody here. Let me see if I can pull that up and we can play it here. But he made a fake punt, and Hunter Renfrow was the guy catching he was receiving the punt. The Chargers go to run the fake punt, and the Chargers punter throws the ball to the sidelines. It's going to be an obvious first down. The fake punt's successful. First down, Chargers. Renfrow comes all the way from receiving the punt. He reads the play and then pops the guy that catches the ball. Ball pops out, incompletion. First down, Raiders right on the line of scrimmage where they ran the fake punt. So just an incredible
he's got that
instincts.
He's got that gift of instincts that I don't know if it's hours and hours in the film room. I don't know if it's just something that you're born with, but man, love to watch that kid play.
Yeah.
Just because I think he's an inspiration to everybody who's not 6'4" and
You've had a few guys like that in the NFL,
muscle, right?
Yeah, you've had a few guys. One that made an incredible catch in the Super Bowl, one of the best Super Bowl catches of all time.
Shout out,
Julian Edelman.
Edelman is also one of my favorites.
Yeah.
That Wes Welker era was phenomenal. I love those. I love those little guys that are out there
The
just
first
hustling.
30 seconds will work.
That's just something as a 5'8", 160-pound soaking wet guy. It was always an inspiration for me watching these little guys out there that have figured out how to play their role in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Which I feel like Renfro has done.
Well, hey, this speaks to also how schools like Clemson have ran their program and how they've been successful versus other schools.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that's going to change that, unfortunately, I think, in the long term, in the macro, is going to be NIL.
Yep.
It's going to hurt a lot of the player development programs like Clemson, and it's player development. You get Hunter Renfro. He's not a 5-star, obviously. We had a linebacker named Ben Boulware. Ben Boulware was incredible, man. He made a few plays in the national championship game where before Bama would snap the ball, he changed the defense from the linebackers to shift to the right. He would know that Derrick Henry's going to get the ball, and he would meet him about 2 yards on the right side behind the line of scrimmage and just meet him.
Yeah.
He made a play against Florida State the same way. 4th and 1, we got to stop Florida State to win the game. We're up 4. 4th and 1, they give it to Dalvin Cook. Everybody knows it's going to Dalvin.
Yep.
And he meets him on the right side, him and Shaq Lawson, and just stopped Dalvin Cook on a 4th and 1. So player development. Ben Boulware was a local kid. He's not going to make the NFL. Not a 5-star, but he's a great college linebacker.
Yeah.
So player development is huge. It's taking these guys and making them into 5-stars when they get there, and getting guys that want to be there and that are passionate about the program.
So how is the NIL going to affect that?
So if you get guys, if you get Jimbo Fishers of the world, they got the #1 recruiting class in the country. Why do they have that? It's because NIL, Jimbo. Him and Saban getting that spat where Saban says, well, they've bought every player they've got. And then, they go back and forth, and Jimbo gets, a 2-minute rant, which is great.
They are fun.
They went back and forth, him and Nick Saban. But, he got that class because of NIL. So he's got players that want to be there because of the money. He got players that are passionate about Texas A&M football.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen? At the end of this year, they're going to get their money and run. They're going to get the bag and run. They've all entered the transfer portal by about 25 of them. 25 A&M players.
Of the A&M players? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
They've all ran.
Mostly because I wouldn't want to play for Jimbo.
Yeah.
But
it's.
Tell me your thoughts on him.
That's the difference between building your program on NIL and using NIL to help the players in your program.
To facilitate.
Exactly. These programs are not going to be successful if they're recruiting strictly on NIL.
Yeah.
But player development's going to be big.
I think Russ has got something for us.
Yeah.
So
this is that play I was talking about, guys, that Hunter Renfro made against the Chargers. If you watch this,
Bradley wants to play.
They're going to
run
a fake punt here.
Play.
They
throw
got
it to the sidelines. Here comes Hunter, and bam!
And it was caught and knocked
So
out of
they're going
bounds.
to run it back here. It's going to run back right now.
Tylon, the punter, found Tavon Campbell.
Just an incredible play.
And Hunter Renfro came up to make sure that was not a completion.
What a play from Hunter Renfro. He's back deep, trying to field the punt. He comes out of nowhere, out of center field. He sees
Looks like
it
it's a good
coming.
fake. There it is.
Here
And boom!
And puts his hat
Hunter lays
right
the wood
on
to
the
him.
football to prevent the first down. That's a heads-up play from Hunter Renfro.
Oh, yeah.
He saw it even before the ball.
He's played a little safety in his day.
Yeah, he's played a little football growing up.
Yeah.
He's played a little instinctual
He played
football.
both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
In his heyday.
Yep. So just guys that are passionate about the program and put everything into it versus guys that are going to get their money. You look at speaking of getting the money, that's what happened to DJ in 2021 with Clemson. when DJ looked more awful than he did last year, or this year rather. In 2021, he looked awful. He was overweight. He didn't put the work in. His knee got injured. He was 30, 40 pounds overweight. He got $1 million from Dr. Pepper and Bojangles. And
that's insane to think about.
Yep. He was a Heisman front runner supposed to be at the beginning of 21, and that went to that went down the toilet quick after that Georgia game when they didn't find the end zone against Georgia, and DJ looked terrible. Georgia won that 10-3.
Now, how do you come in 30 to 40 pounds overweight?
You don't put the work in.
But don't you feel like shouldn't there be some sort of accountability within the coaching staff, within your training, whatever? But how do you not look at a kid and be like, hey, you're over. Like, this is a problem. This is going to be an issue, and it's going to translate on the field. Where is the accountability from the coaching staff? And that's something that I always come down on. As someone who loves to coach, I'm always the hardest on coaching staffs because, to me, that's where the buck stops.
Absolutely.
So
the buck begins and ends.
How do you let a kid come in unprepared to not put them in the best position to be successful?
Yeah, well, that's on, like you said, ultimately it's on the staff.
Yeah.
If a kid's out of shape, injury prone, you're the one that keeps running them out there. So, that is, but, it's the, you can only do so much as well.
Yeah.
It's hard to monitor these kids' diets and training 24/7. So,
But I just feel like you put a little extra emphasis on your stars, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yep.
I mean, when you see a kid coming in 30 pounds over, like, that's notable. Yep. And it's just something to me as a coach that tries to not play favorites. That's an example of allowing a kid to come in that's significantly out of shape. That's an example of playing favorites and not having the same accountability for, one player versus the next, because that walk-on, the Hunter Renfrows of the world, don't come in 30 or 40 pounds overweight and not prepared to play. It's like the walk-ons are there and are grinding just to make the cut, so the expectations are exceedingly high versus a guy who's, a Heisman front runner.
Mm-hmm.
How do you let that slide? That's what it boggles my mind, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it does mine too. That's the whole thing with this era at DJ this year and last year was, he put the work in this year, got in shape. I don't know how he gets out of shape last year. That's very disappointing. But, there's been theories tossed around as well in the Clemson circles about, this kid really isn't passionate about football. He's very talented. He's a natural, but he wasn't really passionate about football. He wanted to impress his dad, his family. His dad was a big part of his life, pushing the look at my kid. He's a 5-star number 1 quarterback. So DJ loved to play the game, but you also have to love to put the work in as well. They have a saying at Clemson, one of many Dabo-isms, his sayings. He's got a bunch of them, but they don't put championship rings on smooth hands. You got to earn it.
I like that.
You don't put championship rings on smooth hands, folks.
I like that a lot.
So you do have to earn it. You got to put the time in to get in shape. Put the grind in.
That's a good one.
Championships are won when the band's not playing and the cheerleaders aren't cheering.
Well,
that's when the championships are won.
That is a fact. And it goes back to kind of that mentality and that work ethic so follow-up question. Number 1, how long do we have Saban?
How long Saban's going to stay? As long as he wants.
Give me your thought process.
Well, I mean, you look at Alabama and they lose a 2-point conversion against LSU. They lose, that game against Tennessee. They've got to run Pete Golding out of town, and they've got to run Bill O'Brien out of town. They got to go. I think O'Brien's going to be the first to go at Alabama.
Yeah.
And the trouble with Pete Golding and him and Nick Saban are like this. The defensive coordinator is who I'm talking about, guys, for you, those that you don't know. The defensive coordinator of Alabama. But the defensive coordinator, Pete Golding and Nick Saban, are like this. So I think Nick Saban's hoping that problem will take care of itself. Okay. And Golding will find another job, maybe a small head coaching job or find another job somehow. But I think he's going to have to replace both coordinators.
What about O'Brien? I mean, what's his next endeavor?
With the talent he had with Bryce Young, who I still think Bryce Young is one of the best quarterbacks Alabama's ever had.
No question.
Bryce Young is right up there with anybody.
Probably one of the best players that Alabama's ever.
Bryce Young's right up there with any of them. And for him to not put a scheme together where they can use Bryce Young more, they can run the ball with Bryce Young more, get him out in space. Every time you turned around and you watched that Texas game, you watched that LSU game, Bryce Young was in the pocket just getting sacked, running for his life. Yeah. For them to not put a scheme together to get him more space quicker is mind-boggling.
Agreed. Totally agree. And I'll go back to the Texas game, and that just stands out for me.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking, why aren't you giving this kid more of an opportunity to do what he does best, and that is find open space? More just a little bit of like read option or rollouts, just things that would give him more opportunity to improvise as he does at the highest level. And it drove me nuts watching him, as much as I love to watch Alabama lose. And nobody loves to watch Alabama lose. I know you and the rest
of the Auburn family do.
That's right. I can't stand the Tide, and I hope they go 0-12 from here to the end of time. But it did drive me nuts watching the scheme of the offense this year and the fact that they could not, to me, they could have blown out everybody they played if they had the right scheme offensively to open up the talent they had on the field.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and that's why I think Bill O'Brien and Pete Golding are both going to be gone.
Yeah,
I think that's going to allow them to make sure that they don't lose those types of games and make sure they don't be in a game that they should easily win. And like Texas, they could have easily lost that Texas game.
Easily.
See, that was a weird year. They could easily be. Let's see, they play 13 games, so they could easily be 9-4.
Yep.
Or they could be 12-0.
And if Quinn Ewers doesn't go down in that game,
with a playoff win.
If Quinn Ewers doesn't go down in that Texas game, very likely they lose that game.
Very likely they probably will. I mean, they're going to get the ball back to Bryce Young, and he's going to have to make more play. It's going to change a lot. But they had a nail biter against Texas, even with Quinn Ewers going down in the first half. But they could be 9-4, or they could be 12-0.
With their talent, I felt as though they would blow everyone out this year.
Right.
With specifically their offensive talent.
Yeah. It seemed like Will Anderson was talked about in the beginning of the year, the linebacker for Alabama, as a Heisman dark horse for a defensive player, and he disappeared for about 2 months. I didn't hear of him for 2 months.
Yeah.
So that was another thing.
It started with the Texas game, frankly.
Yeah.
He had one big play, I think, towards the end of the game that helped them win. But, Will Anderson, where were you for that kind of October, November stint? It seemed like he was missing to a degree.
Yeah, but
which is unusual.
It's going to all change in 2024. We're going to have the 12-team playoff. It's just going to. We got to embrace it.
And
whether we like it or not.
Your thoughts on that, the 12-team?
I'm more of a traditionalist. If you ask me, I wouldn't mind if it went back to 2. Just because I think what makes college football special is the fact that we're able to enjoy the Orange Bowls, the Sugar Bowls, the Rose Bowls, the Cotton Bowls, the Peach Bowls. Some of my greatest memories and some of the hardcore college football fans' greatest memories are these big bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much about who can win the national championship. It's about, I remember getting my tickets in the mail for Clemson games, for season tickets, getting them in the mail in September. I can hardly wait. And, I think these guys might be the ones to take us all the way this year, right? That's what we always talked about for months leading up. These guys might be the ones to take us all the way.
Yeah.
So it's the sweating of that, the anticipation of every game is what makes college football special.
Yeah.
And, having that regular season that makes it so special is going to be watered down. It's going to water down the regular season somewhat.
Yeah.
So it's going to allow 12 teams to get in. And guess what? 10 years from now, 12 teams aren't going to be enough.
It could be March Madness, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
we're going to need 24 like the FCS has.
Well, and that's the beauty of, like you said, the original college football championship days. Every single week, you got to show up, right?
Yeah.
Every single week matters. Whereas now, it's like the Iron Bowl holds less weight. Even if Auburn and Alabama are 2 top 10 teams,
yep.
Well,
whoever loses that one, they're still in.
They're still in if you play out or whatever.
Give you a perfect example of getting your tickets in the mail September. You can hardly wait, and then all of a sudden, 2012. I think it was 12. Yeah, 12 or no 13. I take that back. It was 13. Clemson had Georgia to open the year when Georgia had Todd Gurley, Keith Marshall. They called him Gurley Marshall, called him Gershaw. I remember that. Aaron Murray at quarterback.
They ran all over us. Yeah, I recall.
Oh, okay. Ran all over Auburn that year.
Yep.
Okay.
Brutal game. I believe between the hedges. And,
really?
Yeah, that was a tough one.
But we had them to open the year Labor Day weekend. Clemson, Georgia. We've been waiting a month or two, all year for this game, and it's such an exciting game. We end up beating them 38-35, making a defensive stop to win the game. And after that game, it's like, wow, we might have a shot for the first time since 1981. This might be our year. We got past Georgia. We ran the table all the way that year to November in Florida State. We're undefeated. We got a top 5 matchup in Death Valley with Clemson and Florida State. And Jameis Winston came in and beat us 56-14. That was one of the most talented college football teams ever, that 2013 Florida State team. But, after that, it's like, man, so disappointing, right? It stung. It's like we thought we had a shot. We lose that one. Now we're I feel like our season's over. It sucks, But we rebound with a bowl game, the Orange Bowl against Ohio State that year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we beat Ohio State in the Orange Bowl. That was incredible for one of my favorite memories because I lived in Columbus, Ohio at the time. And then we beat the heck out of Ohio State.
Yep.
I'm watching that game in a bar with about 150 Ohio State fans. I didn't go to that one down in Miami, but I watched it with about 150 Ohio State fans. Taj Boyd makes the first 50-yard run up the middle, keeper to make it 7-0 Clemson. I'm jumping up saying, "Run, Taj! Run, baby, run!" And then some guy, we score, and I'm just yelling, excited. And then some guy says, "Sit down, jerk!" And I look back and say, "Sit down. We're just getting started. We're just getting started." And then we beat the Ohio State University. And then after that game, Dabo said, "We may not be the Ohio State University, but after that game, they know where that paw is now, don't they?"
That's a fact.
Because the whole 3 weeks leading up to that, it was, who's Clemson? Where are they at? I don't even know where they're at. Why do we have to play little old Clemson? Well, after that game, they knew where we were at. So, it's those enjoyment of those bowl games. Those bowl games matter. Ask Mississippi State if their bowl game mattered. Ask, Tennessee beat us this year with Joe Milton. Somehow that, we beat ourselves, but that's another argument. Tennessee wins that game with Joe Milton. That was a big game for them to win.
Yeah.
These bowl games matter. They don't matter as much as they used to now because of the playoff. But, moving this thing to a 12-team playoff, it's
so speaking of
going to make the regular season diluted a little bit. But I'm on the backside of my argument now. We're going to have to embrace it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
It is what it
so
is.
It's all going to be about the playoff now. And if you don't make the playoff, your season's pretty much over, and it does suck. So
but at the same time, I feel like the bowl system has been diluted just due to the amount of
opt-outs.
Just the opt-outs, the commercialization of some of these bowls, and the fact that we got a million of them, and you win 5 games, you get a bowl. I miss the days of the Rose Bowl, right? Like growing up for me, it was like you watch the Rose Bowl,
Yeah.
And that was
He's
as
called the
big.
granddaddy of them all.
Right.
Yeah.
That was as big. And speaking of your 2013 Florida State, probably the most gutting experience of my life.
You were in Pasadena, weren't you?
I was there.
Yeah,
he
went to that national championship game, guys.
I was at that
Florida State Auburn,
and I was probably 20 feet away. No, 30 feet away from Kelvin Benjamin catching that pass from Jameis Winston to get the go-ahead score to win the game. They had rolled out the Auburn cannons, the confetti cannons, and they never went off because we were ahead. They drive down the field with about a minute left. Jameis Winston throws it up in the end zone to Chris Davis, who 2 weeks prior or a month prior had the catch, the kick six, throws it up against Chris Davis to Kelvin Benjamin. He brings it down, wins the game, and that was a lonely, quiet walk out of Pasadena and the Rose Bowl. What an amazing setting, fantastic experience, but one of the most devastated I've ever been.
It's all going to be
leaving a sporting event.
It's all going to be about playoffs and national championships now. Speaking of national championships, we got one Monday night.
Thoughts?
Yeah. The Dogs and the Frogs, guys.
The Dogs and the Frogs.
We're here with the Dogs and the Frogs Monday night. So I think a dog, I wonder, can a dog catch a frog?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I think a dog
on
can
a good
catch
day.
a frog.
On a good day.
If a dog catches a frog, the frog's going to be in trouble.
That's true.
So,
but
yeah, I think
there's some dangerous frogs out there, though.
Yeah, I think it's too many points. I'm going to take those points. I'll tell you right now.
I agree.
But we had a interesting Ohio State Georgia game on New Year's Eve.
Yep.
We had the Ohio State Buckeyes missed that kick as the clock struck midnight. I think we got a video of that. If we can play that as the clock strikes midnight, the Ohio State kicker misses a kick to win the game about as bad as you can miss a kick. I still don't know if what happened to that kick. I've looked at it dozens and dozens of times, but
you could have kicked better. You
could have pulled the Jimmies and the Joes from the stands.
And didn't he hit a couple of kicks earlier in the game? Correct. I thought that he'd hit a couple kicks earlier in the game. I think from like 46 and 25 or something like that. And it was 50, I believe.
Yep.
But
yeah, if we look here, they're going to go ahead and kick it. We're going to see the ball drop in the top left-hand corner here. They're counting down to the 9, 8, 7, and as you see, they're going to snap the ball here. And as the clock strikes midnight on the East Coast, he misses the kick.
And the Dogs go crazy.
And the dogs
go crazy.
It's 2021 and 1981 all over again for the Dogs.
Yep.
Or 1980. That's when Herschel Walker won that national championship. It was January '81, but yep.
And what a story this Georgia QB. I know we're running short on time, but what an interesting story.
Stetson. Yeah. I mean, I've never been a big Stetson Bennett fan. He just strikes me as kind of a arrogant little prick, just kind of, I'm better than everybody else. Stetson
anyone who's the fourth is an asshole.
Yeah, Stetson Bennett the fourth. I don't know, but I've never been a big Stetson fan. He does just enough to get by, right? Just enough to be surrounded by
game
talent.
Manager.
But he was the walk-on quarterback. Spent his time there, didn't transfer.
A.J. McCarron style.
A.J. McCarron style, without the humility of A.J. McCarron, though. Yeah, Stetson needs to take humility 101.
He does.
I promise you that.
He looks, I don't know what it is, but just looks like an asshole.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I've never been a big fan of Stetson, but I know the Dogs are passionate about football. Before last year, they hadn't won a national championship since 1980. So they went on a 30-year sabbatical where the Dogs didn't win anything for about 30 years, on the national landscape. They had good years. And, that brings me back to the whole bowl games and regular season and expansion. The expansionists are always casual fans. typically.
Yeah.
And the casuals, or the people that aren't casuals, are always traditionalists, pretty much. The Dogs still had plenty of great years. You know, they win the SEC in 2002 and win the Sugar Bowl too. They were having fun on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. They had a lot of good wins throughout the years because it wasn't always about the national championship. But now we're getting into
that's the world we live in.
It's the world we live in, guys. It's no longer about the Sugar Bowl and the Orange Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, Rose Bowl. It's going to be about that 12-team playoff, whether you like it or not. I don't really like it just because I spent so many years going to those bowl games. LSU 2012, I think. We kick a game winner, 36-yard field goal to beat Les Miles and LSU. That was a huge win for Clemson. We had a 4th and 16 where DeAndre Hopkins make that catch. Chatler Catanzaro goes down and kicks the kick in the Peach Bowl.
Peach Bowl.
Yeah, we played that on New Year's Eve. I was at that game in the Georgia Dome.
Okay.
Yep. Sammy Watkins gets hurt the first drive of the game.
Yep.
DeAndre Hopkins makes 13 catches. And after that game, I'm like, oh, wow. He's after he caught these 13 balls against LSU, I'm like, he's going to the pros. Dang it.
Well, we missed you already. Yeah.
And then I remember after we got Sammy back that year, and after the Orange Bowl, Sammy was a junior. Sammy had 256 yards. Probably 10 catches, 2 touchdowns, had a heck of a game against the Buckeyes. And they asked Dabo after the game what kind of conversation he's going to have with Sammy Watkins about coming back or not coming back. He said, guys, if I have a conversation with Sammy Watkins about coming back to school, it's going to be a short one. And it was. He was off to the NFL draft. But, it's
talk about that. That was a stacked team talent-wise. On the
receiver side.
On the receiver side.
Yeah, we had Clemson at the time had Martavis Bryant, DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins. Sharon Peake went to the Jets for a while. Adam Humphries played in the league a little bit. Mike Williams.
Yep.
Well,
those just those a couple names there alone. I mean, Hopkins alone. Some programs wait their whole lives to just
Hopkins
get
was another player development guy. We talked about player development. Yeah. Local kid out of Daniel High School.
Is that right?
In Clemson. That's the only high school in Clemson.
Really? So he's local.
One high school.
Is that right?
Yeah. He was a local kid growing up.
No kidding. I always assumed
might have been a 4-star. Might have got a few offers, but nothing big.
I always assumed he was, kid out of Florida or California.
Right.
That was
Sammy was. Sammy was a kid out of Fort Myers, Florida.
There you go.
Speaking of Fort Myers, you know who another guy back in the late 80s came out of he says, Fort Myers, Florida. Deion.
Is that right?
Sanders, yeah. He said at the time nobody came out of Fort Myers. So.
Well, speaking of Coach Prime, one that I was really crossing my fingers that Auburn would pull the trigger is Coach Deion, trying to get him.
Yeah, that's just a great spot for Deion in Colorado, though. He can't do no wrong in Colorado.
I don't think
they have no expectations.
Yep.
They can't go anywhere but up.
Yep.
He's bringing his luggage with him.
Yep.
He's going to run it how he wants to run it.
I think
he's not going to have any boosters breathing down his neck. They made an interesting comment. They said, "Are you going to pay the Deion the $5 million a year or something?" They said, "Well, we're not worried. We're going to get the money, but we don't have it yet."
Yeah.
The athletic director's like, "Yeah, we don't have it yet. We're getting the money now." I'm like, "Wow, this must be Colorado football and not one of these big-time football programs."
Yeah.
So he can't do any wrong.
Yeah.
He's out in the West Coast.
It'll be interesting. I think he's going to have a really interesting and fun to watch career arc.
And
I'm excited for him.
Deion's a no-nonsense guy, too, is why I kind of like him.
Yeah.
Best player's going to play, no-nonsense type of guy. Just says what he thinks.
Yeah.
He don't care what other people think, just says it. So
I like him. Yeah. I was praying he came to Auburn, but
sure. Yeah.
Here we are.
You and every other job up at
that's a fact. Yep.
Yep. But he's going to use the portal. He's going to use NIL to make some money.
He's going to use everything at his disposal, and I think he's going to create a winning culture there.
Yeah,
real quick.
Yeah. Just because, he's going to use NIL the way Jimbo uses NIL.
Yeah.
But he's a different he's going to demand different things
Yes.
from these players
Yes.
and run his program differently than Jimbo does.
Yeah.
Jimbo does it from a desperate standpoint. I want to recruit, and I'm going to do what I need to do to get this 5-star to come here. Deion's going to take a perspective, come here if you want.
Yeah.
You see what's behind me, you're going to make some money. I don't have to show you, but come here if you want.
Yeah.
If you come here, you're going to put the work in, though. I'm going to try to make you quit.
Yeah.
That's the off-season program.
I love that.
Under
Love
Deion
that.
Sanders. I'm going to try to make you quit during the off-season.
Love that.
If you survive this, then you're going to be ready to play.
Then you'll be ready.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
So he runs it differently, but he's going to use NIL the same way these other coaches are.
Hey, Russ, mind if we take a quick break? I apologize.
Yeah. So let's take a quick 3-minute break, guys. And after we get back, let's cover some NFL. And, hey, let's get into some wrestling.
That sounds
some
good.
UFC, man.
Cannot wait.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, we'll take a quick 2 to 3.
Domination.
I've got a golden ticket.
That's a winner!
I've got a golden ticket.
That's a winner!
gentlemen.
All right, guys. Thanks
Can
for.
you hear me?
Oh, let me know.
Can you hear me?
Mic check.
Yeah.
I got you. And then we need to get situated. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We are back here at the Winning Ticket 21 live at DraftKings at Casino Queen here. Ryan's joining us now. Ryan Kinder, one of our other analysts here, along with Micah Mills and Micah with Innovative
Frequencies. That's right.
So that's Micah's company, Innovative Frequencies, for drone usage. So what do you guys do a little bit? Talk about that.
We do photo, video, drone, primarily in the real estate sector. However, we've kind of ventured out into really family-owned businesses. So if you have a story to tell in the St. Louis area, when it comes to specifically family-owned businesses, that's where we specialize. We want to tell your story. So we sit down, we talk through the amazing companies that are coming out of St. Louis that, frankly, a lot of folks have not heard of, but there's so much cool business that is done here in the St. Louis area.
Absolutely.
And we're trying to tell those stories. And
hey, St. Louis has kept me here since 2005.
Which is saying
it's
something.
It's a great market.
Clemson, John.
Great
That's
job
saying
market.
Something.
So 17 years going on 18.
I love it.
Yeah, time flies. But yeah, where can they find you guys at Innovative Frequencies?
Innovative Frequencies on Instagram, Twitter, and then on
just at Innovative
Frequencies, our website, innovativefrequencies.com. Come check us out. We'd love to work with you, and looking forward to our next steps here in the business world.
Yeah, sounds good. But we got a few games to cover today in the NFL. We got some college football. We talked a little bit yesterday, Ryan, on 590 The Fan about the Jags and the Chiefs both talking about. I was talking earlier about doing a teaser with the Jags and the over on the Chiefs.
What is it?
Because what's that?
Over? What?
Yeah. So it's 53.5, I believe, on the over/under on the Chiefs and the Raiders right now.
I like that.
So I'm thinking about teasing that down to do a 2-team teaser, 47.5, over the 47.5, and then the Jags down to like a -0.5.
Oh, I thought you were going to go over on the 40 on the Jags game.
You could. You could tease that down to like 33. I have a hard time trusting Tennessee.
Yeah, that's a real low.
Yeah, I just have a hard time trusting Tennessee. I don't know if Josh Dobbs can find the end zone more than one time. That's my problem with teasing that over.
Yeah, I think the issue is running the ball, and
they're going to be chewing that clock up. And I
either
just don't
team
think
has a very good defense. That's the only reason I think I could see there being a couple running touchdowns. Don't see a lot of passing touchdowns from either team, but you know.
Don't insult him. They're Trevor Lawrence, it's his guy.
Trevor's been lighting the league on fire, guys.
Love it.
Trevor and Etienne both have. But that's no surprise. Trevor's just who he is, prototypical. But Jaguars should win this game. Oh, I don't find a path to them losing this game. So Jaguars pick them, and then over on the Chiefs game, I think that's pretty safe. You could tease it down to 33 and take the over on the Jaguars Titans, but I just have a hard time trusting that Tennessee Titans offense to find the end zone to get it over 33 if you tease it that way. But I don't see how that Raiders Chiefs game's not going to get in the 50s. So that's why I like teasing the over on the Chiefs Raiders.
So, not to switch gears too much, but let's talk a little bit about Monday night.
Yeah.
We got big college football.
Yeah, we got the Natty Monday night, of course. Again, with the TCU Horned Frogs and the Georgia Bulldogs. We got the Dogs and the Frogs again.
Baby.
So they've come roaring their heads on Monday night.
What are your thoughts?
Too many points. TCU's getting too many points. I can't remember Max Duggan losing a game. He didn't. He lost to TCU in overtime. But he doesn't. He's in every game. Max Duggan is in every single game he plays. So I don't see a path where them losing by more than 10 points.
It's 14 right now?
It opened at 13.5. And all that TCU money's coming in. It's down to 12.5.
Okay.
It's swung all the way down because what happens is all the money starts coming in on TCU. So when it gets north of 75% of the money coming in on one side, they stop giving you more They take it down from 13.5 to 12.5, and even lower to get some money to come in on the other side, because they'd like it where 50% one way, 50% the other way. That's a
which
is
it's an interesting, because you got to get in at the right time, right?
Sure,
to get the best value.
So that's when it opened at 13.5, and the public mindset was, this is too many points.
Mm-hmm.
This is way too many points. So
everyone's shipping up.
You can go ahead and assume that all the money's going to come in. So if you're going to take the points in 13.5, get it in early if you're going to take it.
Yep.
That way you've got that extra point.
Yeah, I'm waiting and hope that it's going to go back to 13.5, because it might move to 12, 11.5. If you're on the TCU side of things, you need to lock in the bet.
Now, if you're on the Georgia side, though, you can go ahead and wait and get those.
Maybe hold.
Yeah, get it to hold, But that's just too many points. Hey, I've been liking my teasers lately. If I tease this one, it's going to TCU plus 20. That's for sure. I don't find a way. Max Duggan's just a tough quarterback. I'll take Max Duggan over all of these guys in the playoff. McCarthy, or Michigan's quarterback, and C.J. Stroud. I'll take him over Stetson Bennett, the 17th. I'll take him over.
Shout out Stetson.
Yeah, shout out to Stetson, who does just enough with all that 5-star.
We know you're listening, Stetson, and I could do your job.
Yeah. He's just a regular Jimmy and a regular Joe.
That's a fact.
But,
the poor man's A.J. McCarron.
Yeah. But he doesn't think that. Like I said earlier, humility 101 is not his major.
No.
So Stetson thinks really highly
he's
of
studying
himself.
Stetson.
I'd say maybe he'd grow up, but he's already so old. I don't know.
That's the problem. He'll be around next year and the year after, and that's what they do.
Oh yeah,
which is bizarre.
Yeah. He didn't transfer though. He stuck it out with Georgia. That was his dream school as a walk-on kid, growing up a Georgia fan. JT Daniels transferred out of there. And Justin Field. JT Daniels transferred again. Where'd he go?
I don't know where he's at. I think he's still.
Let me look, because that's bothering me. He went from West Virginia to BYU. Is that right?
I didn't know he wasn't still in the portal.
He went somewhere. Let's see here. JT Daniels.
Rice.
Wow.
I knew it was a blue.
What a false
blue
grade.
logo.
That's
Rice isn't really a university. Rice is more of a starch. Rice is more of a starch. They're not really
it's more of a mid-tier meal. Man.
Yeah, they're not much of a sports program. They're more of a starch. But JT Daniels is somehow going to the Rice Owls. So whatever, he's transferring again. So I don't know. I think the NCAA is going to have to get a hold of this transfer portal. They're going to have to get a hold of NIL a little bit and redefine it, because now it's 1-year free agency.
Right.
Everybody's on a 1-year contract, and if they don't like it, they go sign somewhere else. So they're going to have to change the rules a little bit. I liked NIL. I think it's tough to tell a kid that he can't sell his jersey.
Yep.
That's what Todd Gurley got in trouble for.
There's no shortage of folks that got in trouble for.
I believe the rules are now that if you don't graduate, you can only transfer one free transfer. If you don't graduate, you have to sit out a year. I think you're only getting one free transfer now.
Well, JT Daniels is on his third, though.
Yeah, but he's a graduate transfer.
Yeah, he is. He's a grad transfer out of West Virginia. That's right. Yeah. But it's just, I don't know. College football is changing before our eyes. That's for sure. But I'm going to take TCU Monday night, guys.
Taking TCU?
Absolutely. Plus 13
Plus
points.
13?
12.5. Probably I'm going to tease it, but I'm taking the points.
Any chance they
win
the game?
Tease it with the over. Going to be a high-scoring game, I think.
Any chance they win the game?
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Georgia's susceptible. They have Stetson Bennett at quarterback. That makes them susceptible.
Shout out Stetson.
Yeah, shout out Stetson. He doesn't have the running backs he had last year.
Yep.
He don't have the receivers he had last year. He's got a tight end. He got a tight end that's a monster.
Yeah.
In Bowers.
I think Georgia's going to handle them. I think this might be. I'm going to take Georgia minus the points.
Really?
I think Georgia covers. Yeah, Georgia. I think the SEC is just on another level. They've gone through unscathed, playing much better teams. TCU, people forget, 2 weeks ago, Kansas State whooped them. I mean, they run the ball all over them. You know, people have a lot of recency bias, and they remember them beating an overrated Michigan team. I think Georgia's in another class. If you look, TCU is actually their recruitment class was ranked 1 under Mizzou. So there's different level recruits in this, and Georgia with their 5 stars, it's just I think they're out talented.
Yeah, you know who else? I mean, everybody out recruits TCU though.
Yeah. It's not a lack of heart. I agree, Duggan. He's got the heart. He's got the grit, and that's great against some of these teams that you can out-grit. But when there's that big of a talent spread,
it's a disparity.
Think, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely a talent disparity. But at the end of the day, what good is a 5-star if he doesn't develop? And Sonny Dykes is becoming slowly the king of development. He's turning these 2 stars into 5 stars. He's getting the Hunter Renfrows and the Ben Boulwares and turning them into great players. And scheme. They got guys open in that Michigan game on little drag routes and confusing that Michigan defense. In ways that were like, wow. Every time Michigan would get back in it, TCU would find a way to get back in the end zone, as they have all year. A team would get in the game, and TCU would take them right back out of it.
Yeah. Now,
a lot of points,
does Georgia have the adaptability to – I think what's going to be really telling is coming out of halftime and seeing, A, what the score is, but B, what adjustments are made specifically on the Georgia defensive side of the ball to not allow what happened at Michigan to happen again to Georgia. I think it's going to be very fascinating and telling from a coaching standpoint to see what happens right out of halftime and how these coaches adapt, change, and make changes on the fly to address the schemes. Because if there's one thing TCU does well, it's scheming around their defense, or around the
opposing defense.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting.
Dabo always says there's nothing less important than the score at halftime. Every time they grab him, he goes to the locker room, nothing less important than the score at halftime, whether he's up by 20 or down by 20. So adjustments mean a lot. It's going to be a second-half game for sure. I hadn't seen TCU lose by more than 10 points this year. So
I just think some of those signature wins in the Big 12, like Oklahoma, Kansas, now looking back, we know those games weren't as impressive because we thought those teams were better than they were. You know, Oklahoma finished losing to Florida State in the bowl game. None of the teams in the Big 12 tested them, and then when they did have a test in Kansas State, they lost. You know, they got the ball ran all over them. I think they let up 31 points to a not that potent. It's a running team in Kansas State. So I think the over is definitely the safest bet in this game.
Great.
Yeah, I like the over too. I don't see a path where Georgia went. Georgia's defense has not been very good lately. If you look at the SEC championship game, you look at the Ohio State game,
vulnerable.
Even the end of the year, the Georgia Tech game. That Georgia Tech game was 10-3 at the half or something. It was 7. It was like 10-7 or 10-3 at the half, and it was 7-0 Georgia Tech at one point or something.
Yep.
Like the second quarter or something.
Vulnerable.
So their defense has not looked that impressive. So I think Max Duggan puts up 4 touchdowns.
Yeah. See,
I think they're going to find the end zone 4 times.
I'll play devil's advocate. I actually think this is the year to not necessarily bet on the SEC just based on some of the things we've seen, and I think the pedigree's just not there to the same degree as it's been in years past.
Yeah, I think they started off their bowl games maybe 0-3 or 0-4, but since then we've came roaring back, and I think they've won 5 straight. Tennessee put a beating on Clemson. We've seen that.
I don't know about a beating.
Too soon.
I don't know about a beating. Clemson beat themselves.
Shout out to the Vols.
Yeah, Clemson beat themselves in that dang game. Almost 300 yards at halftime. You know how many points we had, Micah? At halftime with almost 280 yards, I think. We had 3 points.
That's what I was going to get. That was what I thought.
A dozen missed field goals,
red zone issues,
fake field goal attempt that I don't know what was
going on there.
I
don't hate the idea.
Cade would make great plays, get down to the 30-yard line.
Yeah.
and just
can't put it in.
fall flat.
Yeah.
Play calling was awful. We got Will Shipley, one of the best running backs in the country, and we run the ball 9 times in the first half.
Yep.
That is, in the legal world, running the ball 9 times in the first half with Will Shipley and Phil Moffitt. We got a great backup too. That should be criminal in the legal world.
So, I think looking
punishable
at
by law.
The Big 12 versus the SEC matchups, we're looking at about Kansas versus Arkansas. Arkansas was a basement dweller in the SEC. Kansas was one of the bright spots of the Big 12, and they're losing to the basement dwellers of the SEC. I still think SEC's king in college football, and we're going to see it repeated.
Kansas and Arkansas?
Yeah, Kansas, Arkansas. That's just one
that
of the
Big
overtime.
12
SEC. Right. With Arkansas up 30 at one point, and then they just blew the game.
They Arkansas did.
I'm just saying, and they still found a way to win, and that's a basement dweller of the SEC. And I think Kansas was third in the Big 12 this year. I don't think
Arkansas is a basement dweller. KJ Jefferson's a very talented quarterback. They got a lot of good skill players. Defensively, they're awful.
Perennial basement dweller. I mean, let's be honest. In the SEC West, which, to be fair, in the SEC
I think
West,
Arkansas is the middle of the road.
They're right next to, they're with Mizzou. They're right there. As in, they're not Vanderbilt, but they're not winning.
They're better than the Florida Gators. Arkansas is better than Arkansas and Mizzou both. I'd take them over Florida
currently.
Yeah.
But I do think basement dweller is the right. And I love Arkansas. Have friends that went there, but you got to say, to their program as a whole,
losing their defensive coordinator. They just lost their defensive coordinator. Apparently losing their offensive coordinator, losing their quarterback. I mean, they're
losing a lot going into this year,
and they already were a base. I think it's safe to say, for the present future, they're going to be a basement dweller, and they're beating Kansas, who's that's one of the best seasons they've had in years.
So what? Yeah, what? That's a good question. What's the best Arkansas has done, in the last 2 decades?
Well, they were number 1 in the country at one point.
What,
when they,
2000?
For like a week.
Yeah.
When they had Darren McFadden and that other running back.
Yep.
When Bobby cheating scandal Petrino was there.
Shout out, Bob.
Yeah.
We
know you're listening.
He got hired at UNLV.
He got hired at UNLV under Barry
Odom, but then he got hired again this week under another position, another offensive
coordinator
coordinator position. I'm like, what?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Bobby Petrino he's self-serving.
How is
he
that?
always has been. Bobby Petrino's the reason Deshaun Watson didn't win the Heisman in 2016. You know why? Because Petrino kept Lamar Jackson in the game in Louisville. He kept him in the game when Louisville's up 50-0 to pad Lamar's stats.
Yep.
When Dabo pulls Deshaun out in the third quarter of every game.
He's Jimbo Fisher's offensive coordinator now. Texas A&M.
Wow, was that announced this week?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I did not hear
I didn't
that.
know how he leveraged that because he was Missouri State's head coach.
Bobby Petrino. That's a match made in heaven.
It's a match made in heaven.
Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher in College Station with all those NIL recruits and all those money bags that are going there for money. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Bobby Petrino and Jimbo Fisher. That's gosh.
And a couple secretaries.
Remember him in the neck brace? Fell off the motorcycle.
Yeah.
She was.
He was having an affair with the
allegedly.
Golf coach.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Having an affair with was it a golf?
I thought it was an assistant, an assistant in the athletic department.
Allegedly, he fell off a motorcycle, but some believe her boyfriend came back after him in the neck brace. He had the black, he was banged up.
Yeah,
but, Bobby Petrino, he's got some of the
Man, what a good guy.
Even when he was at what a good guy, Bobby Petrino. Not even when he was at Louisville, he did a lot of scumbag things at Louisville. Left the cupboard bare when he left Louisville. His last year at Louisville, they were getting beat by 50 every game. Yep. And he didn't recruit. He didn't do anything. Said, all right, see y'all, I'm out of town.
Yeah.
It's
talking
just
about
self-serving.
NCAA rules that need to change. When you get an NCAA violation, how is it okay to just move schools and then the school is punished? Because that's something that needs to change as well. Because you just do what you said. You leave schools, you commit violations, you win, and when you get caught, you leave for a new school, and they stay punished.
Yep.
Yeah. That's needed to change.
How many programs have we seen fall victim to that?
I know Mizzou, we weren't bowl eligible a couple of years ago because I think the women's basketball team had a legal tutor, then all sports are punished for it.
Yep.
But it's, when you have a coach like that, or I think Frank Haith might have got us some NCAA violations as well. It's you can just leave and get a new clean slate somewhere else. That should follow you if you're the coach that got the NCAA violations.
Totally agree.
Absolutely. But yeah, today we're getting into college basketball where there's today, I don't know, 130 something games probably. There's 360 something NCAA Division I college basketball teams. So just a ton of teams now. And I've been betting against Louisville the whole year.
Okay.
Because
that makes sense.
They're like 2-13.
It's a good bet.
That's a good bet.
Their 2 wins are, I think, against Division II schools or something. They're awful. Another coach that left, Patino, left the Louisville basketball program in shambles when he left.
Which is
NCAA violations again, and then he goes to Iona and becomes the man, right?
Right.
I think that's where he's at now.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he's at Iona now.
It's crazy to think. I'd never really thought about that, but that's such an excellent point of these coaches that are getting away with murder because they can do X, have the program take the brunt of it, move on. Yeah, they have a little bit of a slate against your name, but if there's one thing that's been shown, shout out Bobby Petrino, is that time heals.
And if you win, there'll be a job
That's
for
a
you.
fact.
And that's why the NCAA violations and recruitment, I think right now they're talking about Michigan's coach Harbaugh's in trouble for buying a player a cheeseburger. So some of these rules are, they're insane. But
there was
some of them
25, 30 years ago when the rules were a lot stricter. I remember there was a joke. The Clemson football players got in trouble for getting too much food in the lunchroom. They had too much Jell-O in the lunchroom.
Which is insane to think about both sides of the coin.
The extremes.
Right,
We went from one extreme to the complete other. Because now, with the Texas A&M we're talking about, with the NIL deals, they ask them, how you're going to get paid. I think for each touchdown, their running backs are getting paid. They're not hiding that. This is performance-based. It's not for your name, likeness, image, like it's supposed to be. I thought we were going to see these guys on commercials. I can't remember one Mizzou player on a commercial I'm watching TV, but I know they've got their name, likeness, and image deals. So who's paying them? It's the boosters. It's just became minor leagues for the professional, but it's professional now as well.
It is. And so I guess I'm curious, Mizzou, do you know if you can bet on collegiate wrestling?
Oh gosh, no, I don't think so.
I've
never seen a line for a collegiate wrestling match.
I've never seen.
Because if there is a market for that, I could be a sharp.
Yeah,
I would imagine so.
Wrestling's my background, and they bring me on to talk a little bit of MMA now because that's one of my new passions, or I shouldn't say new, it's one of my passions. But as a Mizzou guy, did you ever attend any Mizzou wrestling when you were there?
I went to state a couple times. I was a wrestler myself,
really?
But I've never seen. I've been in the Mizzou arena for that, but I've never seen Mizzou wrestle myself.
Really?
No.
Where'd you wrestle?
Windsor High School.
Windsor. Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha. I went to Westminster, but was a wrestler there. Coach now, and that was one thing that, as an Auburn fan, I always felt I missed out on was no wrestling in the SEC. No wrestling
you don't
south
have any
of
wrestling and hockey.
That's weird that there's no betting on. Now that you said that, I've never even thought about that. With MMA being such a big thing to bet on now, so common, you think these wrestling that there would be
There's
college
just not.
wrestling.
I don't
to
think
bet on.
there's a big enough market to offer lines.
We're betting on women's basketball. I'm betting
But
sometimes.
it's
I'm
basketball.
betting on.
I've bet on women's basketball before.
At midnight, we're betting on Russian ping pong.
I don't bet on that stuff. That's David's ping pong. David, if you're listening, I know we had to get a ping pong shout out. He brings it up every week.
Yeah.
People were betting on ping pong during COVID. It was the only thing going on.
Oh,
that and also Madden simulations. They were betting on Madden simulations.
Thank God
guys.
we are out of that.
Thank God we're out of that. Yeah, that
was a
miserable
dark time. Betting on weather.
We didn't have any action.
Snooker. When you look at the sports, wrestling is not. There's MMA, but we have snooker.
What the heck is what is that?
I couldn't tell.
No
There's
idea.
Darts. You can
Sounds
bet
European.
on darts. You can bet on Aussie rules, football.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
In my
wrestling,
opinion,
that's something.
that's a market.
It's a big enough
that's a
market
market that's
offer it,
untouched. I mean, you got a good idea right there.
To be fair, the wrestling market is growing substantially, and a big part of that is the introduction of women's wrestling. And now, so even at the high school level
Iowa's
now,
got a women's team now.
tons
and
of
other teams in Division II.
Our where I coach now, we just introduced the women's program this year, and I'll tell you what, these young ladies are some of the best wrestlers that I've seen, because a lot of them either family ties to wrestling or gymnastics backgrounds. But it's very interesting. It's something that was really taboo back in the day of women's, the idea of women
it's the
wrestling.
biggest growing sport for women.
It's massive.
And as local fans here, we have a national champ in Keegan O'Toole. I believe
Shout out Keegan.
We
Great dude.
If for Mizzou fans, we have a lot of pain. If that's a sport you want to get into, it's a sport we actually win in. We're usually ranked top 5.
I was going to say, that's why I asked specifically, is Mizzou powerhouse in the wrestling department.
You got Penn State, Oklahoma State, Mizzou. They're one of those teams that
Iowa.
They're
in the mix year after year.
You got those Midwestern schools that are big in wrestling.
That's
not a whole lot.
Speaking of the betting in wrestling, give us one solid play today for the MMA. We got any MMA action today?
No MMA action today.
No MMA action today. Okay. When's our next one? The next week?
Well, let's talk a little bit. Actually, there's a big spark discussion going on in the MMA community, and that is around fighters. And if you recall, Evan Elder was on the show recently. Now, the UFC fighters are no longer allowed to place any sort of wagers on mixed martial arts.
And that's the way it should be.
As it should be.
Right. Well,
because
you can throw that stuff easily.
There's already accusations of a coach.
Correct. James Krause.
Yes, James Krause. That there's been fights that people think may or may not have been fixed, and he's not allowed to corner anymore. If he's your guy, he can't.
Not only that, if you train out of his gym.
Dana White is in that controversy where people are on him about not paying the fighters enough. So, I mean, if you got some 9-1 underdog and he's the dog.
He was opening up the slap league this week.
Yeah, there's a reason they can't bet on that stuff. That makes sense.
So, my other business proposition pitch that I'm going to give today is, if you are Live Tour and you have Live Tour money.
Right.
Dude, start a competitor to the UFC and just pay these guys a good amount of money. You could crush the UFC.
Bellator, for the first time, I think, is making. Because UFC's always been, it's been the majors. But with them not willing to fight Bellator is doing a lot of great things. Where I think in the future, Bellator could be the NFL, and the UFC could be the XFL.
There's a very real chance of that. Not including or limited to Dana White, some domestic violence that just came out this past week. Yeah, can't do that. Can't do that. But
not paying his fighters. Bellator's known for paying their fighters. If you're not a top guy, you're not making money in the UFC. Where even the PFL is known to pay their fighters better than the UFC. That's not a good business practice.
Yeah, and the reality is the number of fighters that are now coming out, both under contract with the UFC and then post contract with UFC, talking about the disparity in pay and the fact that Dana's worth $4 billion. And these guys, there's fighters that are fighting on the card next week, the week following, that are literally like on food stamps, that are walking dogs for a living, that are
I was actually
doing
talking
anything.
to Joaquin Buckley. And to see how much money you don't bring home, because that's something I did not think about until speaking to him, that when he brings home the $20K, he's not bringing home $20K. His trainer's getting paid. At the end of the day, there might be $2K left for them.
That's
because you got to pay the camp, you got to pay the coaches, got to pay once everybody gets their split.
Travel.
The money you think these guys are making, the top 5 guys are. The rest of them, some of them still have. He was still working up until very recently.
Most of them are scraping by. I mean,
so
most
are the
of them
Bellator fighters and are they allowed to mix between UFC and?
They sign contracts, and Dana don't want to. The championships, Bellator a couple times have called out where they'd like to fight their champs versus the UFC champs, but the UFC looks at it as a lose-lose situation, because if they win, people say, hey, you were supposed to win.
Yep.
If you lose, you just lost. Bellator's the new top of the game.
That's one thing that the UFC is adamant about. They don't cross promote. So outside of the McGregor-Mayweather fight, they do not do any sort of cross promotions.
They usually eat up the competitors.
Yep.
Everyone that's came besides Bellator usually gets bought by the UFC.
They're going to buy
eat
you.
up all competition.
Yep. And frankly, they've created this monopoly that I don't know how sustainable it is. It's an interesting.
Because now we got UFC champs that are taking celebrity boxing matches. Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul gets more money for a boxing match, a YouTube star, than the best fighters in the world. So that's telling you something's wrong.
Not more money. We're talking astronomically more money than than an entire roster.
And the problem with fighting is what you're talking about is it's UFC. It's not about how good you are, or it's about how many pay-per-views you sell. It's like wrestling, where how popular you are. Because Michael Chandler, love him, but he's an exciting fighter. Loses, gets paid because he puts
on a show every time.
Putting on a show is more important. They have plenty of guys that are good wrestlers that are boring.
Yep.
They don't want to promote. It's not about being the best fighter in the world. It's about being the most exciting and most marketable.
That's 100%. And also, it brings in kind of the other question is, how do you sell yourself as a fighter? And that's a really new kind of topic or hurdle that a lot of these fighters have had to address is not only do I have to perform in the cage, but I also have to perform on the microphone.
And they're putting on fake personas because I've heard Kobe Covington's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He puts on as the heel, gets people to hate him. He does the Trump skit
big MAGA guy.
He says he loves Trump, and then so already making half the people mad, and then he's misogynistic and says funny things, and but that is what made him. He was one fight away from being. They said they were canceling his contract, and then he grabbed, and I believe he called the Brazilians dirty and started a fight, and then that got some excitement in it, and it's like it's almost turning into WWE with the drama.
To a degree, it is, and I think McGregor had a big part in that. I think that he kind of initially was the one who showed up and said, look, not only am I going to be a fighter, but I'm going to be an entertainer.
Yeah, because he's getting championship fights. When's the last time Conor's won? And he still comes back to a championship fight.
He has won one fight since the Obama administration.
Wow.
One fight.
Who? Conor McGregor?
Conor McGregor's won one, and he's still the face of the fight game, right? We're still talking about
younger.
Yeah, and he's just coming off that snap in his leg, and he's still talking about coming back and giving him a top 5 fight.
Yep.
Anybody else would be coming back and fighting for their job.
Yep. Yeah, he's coming off of, multiple losses, but again, asses in seats. And I think that that's a big factor is that almost as important as being loved, sometimes being hated in the UFC world, is that whether or not people are showing up to watch you fight, whether they want to see you lose or win, sometimes it's more important to have people show up to watch you lose.
Bad publicity is better than no publicity.
Correct. Nothing worse than a mute fighter.
Does John Jones fight this year, or is he done?
That's a tough one. I hope not. I hope that he's done, and that's just because of what's transpired in his personal life and the fact that I do think there's some things you should not be able to come back from, no matter how gifted of an athlete you are.
And pick one, because all the things this guy's done.
I just think he's crossed the line too many times to where, yes, if he wants to fight again, he will, but I still think there's some things that are unforgivable.
And the UFC, though, it's not Greg Hardy,
there's no
you're
shortage.
Out the NFL because you choked your pregnant girlfriend. Well, come fight for us.
Yep.
Let's do a MMA,
There's no shortage. I mean,
they're definitely.
So it seems like it's from the self-promotion aspect of the bad publicity is better than no publicity. We've got a lot of people here, even though they hate you.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the old, the shows, the WCWs and stuff of the world, how you'd have one guy, 80% of the people would hate him, but the arena's just packed.
Yeah,
right?
100% of the people are talking about it.
100% of the people are talking.
That's a fact.
They've got this thing on pay-per-view, even though 80% of the people here hate him. It's on pay-per-view, and they're selling a lot of tickets.
And that's what it comes down to.
Kind of like that a little bit?
It's very much
100%. And I think it's problematic because the UFC, unlike most other sports, it's not necessarily the best fighters that get the best opportunities. It's the ones who sell the most. Those are the ones that get the best opportunities, that get the most money. So it's the ones that people show up for,
Mighty
not
Mouse,
necessarily.
or you've got people that are the best fighters in the world, but if you're not exciting, where it's what we're talking about, like the PFL, that is a fighting tournament, or some of these, the Bellators, where they do tournaments. So they're trying to find who the best fighter in the world is. The UFC is trying to find out who is the best ticket seller.
Yep.
And
who's going to make us the money, right?
Right. You're looking at guys like Jorge Masvidal, has no business fighting in the fights. He does BMF belt. These are just made up things, but it sells tickets, and that's what's important.
You get The Rock to show up. You get it's fascinating, and it's a fascinating landscape. But let's talk a little bit about February 11th. We got Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. So Islam, if you recall,
the Russian,
yeah. Dagestani.
What was the Russian quote? In Russia, they wrestle bears. In America, they wrestle what?
No, it's. I believe it's in America. It's child, you play with dog. In Russia, it's child, you play with bear.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they're out there wrestling bears for real.
Yeah.
But
the bear wrestler, the Russian bear wrestler.
So this is one of those guys. Islam Makhachev just took the belt off of Charles Oliveira, the Brazilian, who had not been beaten, I believe, in 13 or 14 fights. Islam Makhachev is now, I think, 23-1. Frankly, is outside of the one crazy knockout, has not been touched. And they say things like, when Michael Jordan was on the court, he was the only guy on the court. Well, when you put these Dagestanis in the cage, they're the only guy in the cage. Yep. And they just maul. They drown their victims. So it'll be really interesting because Alexander Volkanovski, a legend of himself, a featherweight who is moving up from 145 to 155 to take on and become the double champ. Fun fact about the guy, Australian or New Zealander, but is a former professional rugby player.
So pictures of him. He was a huge man.
He used to walk around at, I believe, 220, 230. He's now fighting at 145.
Wow.
Just a really cool, fascinating story of how he got to where he's at. But is the top featherweight in the world, moving up to 155 to fight Islam Makhachev on February 11th. Tune in. That is going to be a banger of a fight. But I do think, once again, the Dagestanis will reign supreme.
He's in over his head too much because he's already so much stronger than everybody in his own weight class. Yep. And then you got Volkanovski moving up. He's got the great boxing. Always got a puncher's chance, but let's be serious. Very, very slim chance he gets out of this with a win.
Harsh reality is, doesn't matter how hard you can hit if you're on your back.
Right.
And I think that's what
already
Islam's
giving up the weight, as a wrestler, how important that weight is.
Yep.
It's, those guys are cutting to make the weight. So he's probably 40 pounds bigger than him.
No question.
And, when that fight comes, he'll feel the strength difference.
Islam walks around at 200 pounds.
I'm excited to see Triple C come back. I think he is one that will come back and win the belt off of who's holding that belt right now. I can't think of his name that took the knee to the face.
Hold on. Aljamain Sterling.
Sterling.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Took me a second.
That'll be an interesting didn't like the way he won, but then he came back and defended it. So now he's more of a legitimate champion. But I think he's the one that's going to lose, first one to lose his belt this year.
Well, I think
depending on when that fight is.
People don't talk about Henry Cejudo enough, but he is on the Mount Rushmore of fight athletes.
Olympic
We're talking about Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling, 125-pound champion, 135-pound champion, beat some of the best ever do it. He, in his retirement speech, I am the greatest combat sports athlete of all time. It's up for debate, but he's got a point.
He doesn't get the love. And then
he does not.
Again, going back to just everything we just talked about, he just doesn't have the fan base.
Yep, the king of cringe, they call him. The king of cringe.
He was one that tried to be the heel, but then people didn't believe it, and they just thought he was a cheesy, just, give it up, dude.
Yep.
He acted like a ladies' man or a cool guy.
More on self-promotion than anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so he but to his credit, he kind of took this this cringiness and ran with it.
Yeah.
And created his own weird little fan base.
Yeah.
As a result of that. So it always does come back to, though, do people want to show up? Are people going to want to pay to see you fight? And when it comes to Triple C versus Aljo, very interesting matchup, and I would love to see Triple C come back and do the kind of GSP route of coming out of retirement to take the belt one more time and then right off into the sunset.
That's one cool thing about fighting that we've been seeing more and more is the legends coming back. For one, you don't see Michael Jordan coming back to play LeBron, where in the fight game you see the guy that's been out the game for a couple years, GSP, come back to fight. We've seen Silva come back and fight. You see these legends of the game come back in their old age and fight the young guns, and that's just something in other sports you never get to see. You don't see them come back for one more show, and that's one cool thing going on with MMA right now.
100%.
Sure. But, yeah, guys, we got some action tomorrow with a big slate of NFL and a lot of craziness going on with seeding. I guess they're going to decide the Baltimore Ravens and the Bengals. If the Bengals lose, then it comes to a coin flip. Is that how they're doing?
Yeah, but on a betting show, I was wondering if you knew this, Clifton John. On these bets, on the over and under win totals and everything, is everything void now with them canceling the? If you had a Cincinnati over win total and you missed it by a game and they canceled that game, are all the bets void? Or if you had the under, are they going to pay you when they canceled one of the games that might have been a win?
Well,
what is going on with bets right now?
Very book specific.
Book specific. I've been trying to look
that's
into
the
it.
popular
and I
answer.
yeah.
It's kind of like when you have a poker ruling in the world of poker.
Yeah.
It's like, well, who's working the floor?
Yeah.
What casino are you at? What house are you at? And it's very book specific as far as how they're going to honor that bet. What house are you at? Circa. One of the big books in Vegas is they have paid out the first quarter bets that happened.
Yeah.
The Kyler Boyd touchdown.
Uh-huh.
If anybody had Kyler Boyd first touchdown score, if anybody had any of those that hit in the first quarter last week, they paid those out. All the other bets were canceled, refunded. So you got your money back.
You're talking about a coin toss. Imagine if you had $10,000 on a division winner and it was decided with a coin toss.
There was a big debate on this on Twitter about what Circa's going to do. I'm trying to find it, but the one of the managers at the Circa book was saying that they're
in a lose-lose situation because they don't want to give away their money. But if you don't and you void all these bets, how are you going to trust the books? Because we didn't pick for this game to get canceled. Obviously, Hamlin's life is more important. The game should be canceled. But as a bettor, that was something I've wondered about, if they're going to pay out all these bets or void them all, or what's going on.
Yeah, it's just very book specific. It's a mess, though. You know what a lot of books did is, of course, cancel the bets, refunded the money. Some of the books, though, it was interesting. I heard them where they I heard one guy had a ticket where he had a teaser. The first leg of the teaser lost on Sunday, but he had the Bengals as another leg of the teaser. So what they did is they refunded all Bengals bets. They refunded the teaser, even though he lost on Sunday on it.
Wow.
Because they refunded all Bengals bets.
That was good of them.
Yeah,
I was expecting
a lot of times
the opposite.
it's a lot of that, good publicity, customer service with such a competitive world now that we're living in the wagering circles now. Customer service and good publicity starting to mean a lot.
You should use a good book like DraftKings and not a third-party site.
Shout out DraftKings.
I've always said this is this rivals any book I've been in, guys. They've got a ton of options here. It seems like 30 to 25, 35 kiosks, and just a great team that takes care of everybody. So great food too.
Question for both of you: as someone who's newer to the gambling game, can you give me a story of any of your best and worst beats?
Well, one that always comes to my mind. is the 1999 NLCS. Did I ever told you that one, Ryan? Oh, this is a good one, guys. 99 NLCS, Game 6. The Mets were originally down 3-0 in the NLCS to the 99 Braves. The Mets end up winning Game 4. They're down 3-1. They go into Game 5. They're trying to win Game 5 to make it 3-2 and go back to Atlanta. So Robin Ventura, they take a 3-2 lead. The over-under 7.5. The Braves take a 3-2 lead in the top of the 15th. Keith Lockhart scores a run. And 3-2 Braves, right? If you got over 7.5, you think there's no way, right? Because it's going to end 4-3. If the Mets win, it's 7. The under's a lock. Well, what happens is Robin Ventura comes up in the bottom of the 15th, bases loaded, and hits a grand slam to make it 6-3 final. But here's the bad beat part of it. The guy on first base and Robin Ventura never touched home plate. So, because all they needed was the guy on second and third to score to give them a 4-3 win. The fans, the players, everybody mobs the field. Ventura and the guy on first never touched home plate. Official score, 4-3 Mets winner.
Wow.
So you went from winning
You're kidding.
what you thought was a win for hours later or the next morning, which it happened at 3 o'clock in the morning because it was a 15-inning playoff game. And this is when they can make all those pitching switches and do all kind of stuff to really slow the game down. But, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. So you think you got a winner, you wake up to a loser.
So you had the over?
You had the over. Now, if you had the under, you're on the other side.
You had the greatest. That's the
if you had
greatest.
the under,
That's the greatest
you wake
morning
up and realize you won.
That's the greatest hangover of all time. Yeah.
You're befuddled. You just can't believe you won this one after you lost it. What happened? And then you realize Ventura and the guy on first didn't touch home plate.
And they don't.
It's not official.
You're kidding.
All they needed was the guy on second and third to win the game.
Wow.
That's hard to top.
Wow.
That's hard to top. Anything come to your mind, Ryan?
I've had nothing like that happen.
Well,
to me.
anything?
That's so great. Mostly, my biggest mistakes that I've learned from is I put together these 13, 14 team leggers, go 13-0, and I'll have something on my ticket that's minus 10,000. So it probably added, this bet that paid $8,000. I needed, we needed Durant to score 20 points. Should be a lock. His over and under was 29. Probably made me an extra $2 on the $8,000. I lose. I've had a couple tickets where I've added those things.
You're right there.
Cut those off.
Devastating.
But nothing like that. That's on a rule change that would.
Yeah,
I can't believe on a home run. I would think touching the plate or not.
Yeah, you would think
one of the
that would
worst
just
I've
you just count it. And
I was a Mets fan growing up because I hated the Braves. So I was 14 years old at the time, and I was just diehard Mets fan. I listened to this guy by the name of Arnie Spanier on the radio as a kid, and he was a Mets fan, and I'd call in all the time. But, Arnie Spanier back in the day. 3 o'clock in the morning, Ventura hits that grand slam, and everybody's asleep in my neighborhood at this time because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. There's a few Braves fans
you're running
up,
around
I guess.
shirtless. Yeah.
Well, there's a few Braves fans up, I guess. But he hits that one, and then I get to go to Game 6 now. If we win that one, I'm going to Game 6 in Atlanta because I'm 2 hours away. My uncle's going to take me to Game 6, he said. So he hits that home run. I just go outside yelling, just screaming that the Mets win. We're going to Game 6. We're going to come back from a 3-0 deficit, win the World Series. Amazing Mets. This is great. And I start seeing lights flicker on left and right. And I'm like, oh, man, I better go back in. I'm yelling, run around the neighborhood, waking everybody up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So,
well, you're in Braves country there, too.
Yeah, Braves country's the Southeast.
Well, that's the whole,
Yeah.
All my buddies.
That's going to do it for us, guys. Thanks for joining me, Ryan.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, Micah. Yeah,
Thank you.
It's been
fun.
Thank
you for having us.
Thanks for DraftKings for having us every week. This is great. One of the greatest books that I've been. This rivals anything I've ever been in, guys. So it's a growing market. So that's great to hear. Thanks for Russell Sides, our producer. We couldn't do it without the straw that stirs the drink, guys.
Shout out, Russ.
But till next week, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.